Okay, thank you. Okay, good morning all. Thank you for your attendance. First of all, do we have any apologies? No? Okay, thank you. Sorry, and then I have to read out the thing to start. Today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by the Way of Council's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the council. As you will see from the agenda papers, generally the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and training purposes. Proposed public speakers have been made aware of the broadcasting arrangements prior to this meeting. Would members please use their microphones to contribute to the meeting, and please remember to switch off the microphone when you have finished. Also, could you ensure that you would refrain from using any mobile devices during the planning committee, and any mobile phones, iPads are switched off or on silent. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? No? Before we start, it's good to see, near enough, a full house. It's good to see we're getting back to normality. Minutes of the last meeting held, have we got declared a true record, please? Seconded. Thank you. Okay, before we start, can I check? Oh, we have a full house now. Can I just check that you've had the late presentation papers? Yeah, thank you. And you will note before we go, there's only 2 items on the agenda now, and not 3, because there's some problems with the Pilgwanley one which need to be looked at. Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to item number 1, which is application number 211134, and this is to be presented by Joanne Davidson.
Thanks, Chair. Okay. So the first planning application, sorry, I should say morning, everyone. The first planning application, land north of 51 Orb Drive, Newport. Just to put that in a little bit of context, this is the residential development site behind the Lysets Institute on Corporation Road in the Liswerry ward. The application proposal is stated at the top there, development of 18 residential dwellings along with associated parking and landscaping. As a major form of planning application, it would ordinarily come to planning committee to be determined, and the recommendation is cited at the bottom there, granted with conditions and subject to a legal agreement, with the usual delegated authority should the legal agreement not be signed for any reason. This is the site layout proposed and what we're considering today. So 18 2-bedroom dwellings. I've given the site history in your report. I haven't replicated it on a slide, but you'll see this goes back quite some time. So we originally had an outline proposal on the site back in 2004. It was actually around the time that we had proposals for the Morrison's supermarket and the refurbishment of the Lysets Institute as well. So, we're going back nearly 20 years. At the time, the residential development was going to be progressed by a registered social landlord. I believe it was Link Cymru at the time. And they did indeed build out the first phase. So that was following Reserve Matters consent via a 2009 submission. Again, the details are in your agendas. Link Cymru built out the first phase, and then, since then, the site has lain dormant. So since around 2012, nothing has happened on the site at all. And what has happened more recently is that the remaining development area of the larger site has passed to a private developer who is now proceeding to complete it. Now, they have proceeded in relation to some phases to develop it in accordance with the 2009 Reserve Matters, but on a couple of pockets of that larger development site, they've wanted to change things. And this is why we've got this application now before us. So the changes they want to make to this one I'll run through now as part of the presentation, but that is why this application is back. We're not increasing the overall unit numbers on the entire site at all. And in this particular parcel, it's 18 units. So I'm just running through there the main issues to be considered. And as I say, these are replicated in the officer report. But that site history and an extant permission is very relevant. So you'll be familiar with the phrase fallback and things like that. So that 2009 Reserve Matters consent linked to the 2004 outline is extant. They can still develop the entire site out in accordance with that 2009 Reserve Matters detail. Okay? And that's relevant because if we don't proceed with the development before us today, they can fall back on the 2009 extant consent. So the other main issues are ones you'll be familiar with now: site layout and design, permeability, good placemaking, residential amenity, flood risk, because this is Zone C1, trees and landscape, and the Section 106 legal agreement. So this is an extract from the approved layout from that 2009 Reserve Matters, and the site we're looking at, oh yeah, you can see my cursor. Bear with me. So is here, and I've pointed it out there, 18 units in 3-storey flatted blocks. That's what the 2009 extant Reserve Matters showed. Okay, so let me just take you back to the layout we're looking at today. So instead of the flats, the 3-storey flats, they're proposing standard residential 2-bedroom units. An aerial shot here, again to put it into a bit more context, the site, so you know how it relates to surrounding land. So my cursor is in the area of the development site, the wider development site. The actual site you're looking at today is down here. Hopefully you can see my cursor there. The Morrison's supermarket, very short walk away here. Lycett's on the frontage here, and if you're familiar with this site, you'll know we've got a B&Q superstore adjacent to the site, and public open space at what we call Black Ash Park, immediately to the north of the site. So this is the 2009 Reserve Matters. This is the area of the site we're looking at here underneath my cursor, where you can see those 2 flatted blocks facing one another, and that's really there to show you how the whole site came together in that 2009 detail. This is also reproduced on your agendas, but this is really how it's been phased out in practice. So the green area is what Link Cymru built back in 2009 to 2012, and then everything else you see is being done by the private house builder that now owns the site. So in actual fact, the area that's blue and the area that's sort of that yellow colour are all pretty much done. The area that is on the far right here is under construction, and the pinky area is the part of the site we're looking at today. Again, another aerial shot to show you some key permeability, access related issues. So the site is roughly where my cursor is, and that big swathe of green hatched area is Black Ash Park, the public open space that serves the site. And what you can see is the green line running north to south is public right-of-way. And we've got public right-of-way that leads a short walk from the site we're looking at today, northwards to Black Ash Park and beyond, and southward directly onto the path alongside the SDR. So that'll take you to the wider environs in Nash, Lisweri, schools, etc., etc. Okay, so one of the issues I mentioned on the earlier slide is trees and landscape. The site is formerly industrial, so the majority of the site didn't really display much in the way of landscape features, but we do have established landscaping along the periphery, and we want to keep that if we can. Much of it is actually outside the applicant's ownership. But it's been relevant in how we look at the layout and how we consider the impact of the trees on future residential gardens in particular. And this plan has been provided to us by the applicants, and what it's intended to show is, with the retention of the trees, which aren't protected by the way, but they do form a very nice natural woodland corridor along that southern boundary. So what that plan is showing is, because of the orientation, that is the range of shadow that would be cast across the site for the whole day. So it's not suggesting that that range is always going to be in shadow. It's during the day as the sun passes round the south. That is the range of shadow that will be cast. The landscape officer and the tree officer for the council have been really heavily involved in the evolution of this scheme. You'll notice it's a 2021 application, so it's been with us a little while and subject to a lot of negotiation. We're satisfied that the development won't have any direct impact on the trees. They're going to stay. And we're also satisfied on balance that shading that will occur to some of the gardens is acceptable. In fact, it could be a benefit. So we're happy as officers that the long-term retention of those trees, particularly as a lot of them are outside the site boundary anyway, is satisfied. And the landscape officer and tree officer, having been on the site with myself also, are also satisfied, and no objections from them. I've included this plan because you'll see it's going to be subject to Section 106. We've detailed what the Section 106 terms are, and I'll go through those again in a second. But this plan is to show you what is proposed to come or go over to private management company. So I put this in really to show you that those areas very close to the trees along this southern boundary are not part of gardens. They're going to be privately managed as communal spaces. And as part of the layout, you'll see we've got quite a nice area of open space here. Again, this has been subject to a fair bit of negotiation. It'll be accessible to all the residents. It's not a quick play. It is informal green space. And that is largely as a consequence of the very prominent overhead power lines that run right through the site with the associated pylons. So, of course, we can't have buildings under or within the buffer zone of those lines. And so the applicant proposes to use that area for parking to serve the housing, landscape of appropriate species and height, and open space that will be accessible to all. So moving on to the design of the units, fairly standard. What I've shown here are the elevations, but also then little extracts of the plan to show you where they are. So these three, for example, are these three on the right. Absolutely fine. We have no issues with the design. So this run here, this terraced run that you see in the middle, is the lower run of terraced units that's going to face that open space in that parking area. The reason I've shown you the back is you'll see in a moment when I show you the photos of the site, you will see that as you swing round on Orb Drive and observe the site. Again, more of the same, really. I won't go into too much detail on these, but that terraced run on the bottom is the other terrace that's going to face directly onto that open space, which has the bonus of natural surveillance at all times. And they're the two units on the top end here. Again, fine in design terms. At the bottom, you can see a typical street scene. So that street scene you're looking at on the bottom of that slide is the one that will run along the continued Orb Drive. So AA, following my cursor here, that's what you'll see. So that open space I've just been talking about is this area here. And again, some other views, but these are the views of those fronting units to the open space. So again, absolutely fine. We like the mix of materials, the design, some of the minor design features, and the fact that they've added openings and features to the side elevations where the side elevations are prominent. So these are photos of what we've got on site already. So a slight variation in the ages of these units depending on what phase they're in. But this photo shows really well the constraint posed by the pylons and the overhead lines to the wider development. So this is what I would call phase 1B. So this is the style of units approved by the 2009 consent, but built by the current developer. This is the development site, the proposed site, and a little bit of the site next door that has also been subject to some changes. But that's really mainly to show that established woodland corridor on the southern boundary. This is, so the two houses you can see on this shot were built by Link, again in that 2009-2012 period. And then directly adjoining those is the site we're looking at today. Again, some more shots of the site, just panning round a little bit so you can see how this development is coming on quite rapidly at the moment. I put this in. This is a phase 1 block of flats, very similar to the two flats that would otherwise go on this site if they developed out in accordance with the 2009 permission. Now, from officers' perspective, when we stated it in the report, we think the proposed scheme you're looking at today is better than the scheme we approved in 2009. So the two-storey houses that we're looking at are preferable in layout and design to two of these on the site. Some images there again that link to permeability in that public right-of-way I mentioned. The top photo is the public right-of-way behind the B&Q building that leads off the site up to Black Ash Park, and the one on the bottom there is where it comes out on the south onto the SDR path. Again, some more street scenes of the phase 1 that Link actually built out, for those who aren't familiar with this estate at all. And this is a panoramic image taken as you enter in off Corporation Road. Just so you can see the Morrison's supermarket on the far right, and phase 1 development then directly in front of you. Again, some more shots of the development, but these are older. So these are taken from Google, and these show phase 1, and on that bottom photo you can see the site on the right-hand side. Now they are dated 2012, so I've already shown you more recent photos. You can see how the site has come on. This is Black Ash Park, again, for those who aren't familiar. It is a big area of public open space managed by the council and directly accessible from the development. This is Somerton Park local equipped area of play. This is the nearest equipped area of play to the site, and it's some way north of the site. Okay, so the other key point that I've mentioned in the report is flood risk. A lot of detail in your report. I won't go over all that again, but they're the key messages in terms of the flood risk considerations. No objection from NRW, subject to conditions. The site is in a flood risk area, zone C1, but benefits from an extant planning permission for residential development. The dwellings will be flood-free in the 1 in 100 and 1 in 200 year scenarios. The risk of flooding beyond the tolerable 1 in 1,000 year limit set in TAN 15 only occurs beyond the 94-year lifetime of development. You may be aware we normally assess 100 years, and that's in tidal flood conditions. Some tests in TAN 15 are not met by this development, but officers have considered the site history and the information in the submitted flood consequence assessment are significant material considerations, and flood risk has been shown to be capable of acceptable management and limited risk. And you'll see we've put a condition, or recommended a condition, that the finished floor levels of all the properties are a minimum of 7.7 metres above ordnance datum. Okay, the Section 106 legal agreement then, this is also in your agendas, but just the key points there. No affordable housing in this phase at all. Because the earlier phases were 100% affordable, the affordable provision on the entire site has exceeded the minimum percentage requirements in the local development plan. At primary level, no contributions are required. We have capacity at primary level, but we do require a contribution to Lisworry Comp. And we also require a contribution to leisure. Okay, so summing up then, Chair, I'll take you back to the first slide. We're recommending it be granted, subject to conditions, and that's Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Evans.
Thanks, Chair. Just to declare, this is in my ward, but no other conflict. Any indications on the floor plans of the square metres, Joanne? The sort of the floor plans that I've seen on the planning portal look really small. It's hard to see. There's no sort of design measurements on them. And any indication of what tenure these might be? Are they being sold on the open market, or are they for rent? They're sold on the open market.
Appreciate I didn't put floor plans in, mainly because the presentation was quite long, so I wasn't sure what was going to come up. But we're certainly happy with the floor layouts. They are only 2-bed units, so they are on the smaller side, and they are obviously linked. They're not detached. Some of them will have the benefit of what they call a home office. Whether it's used for that purpose is obviously up to the occupiers. But the standard of amenity in terms of internal space is acceptable.
Councillor Markford.
Yeah, just a point on the flood risk. I believe that area is one of the lowest lying lands in Newport. And you said that you're happy with the 1 in 100 and 1 in 1,000. Have these been updated lately, the 1 in 100 years? Because we're hearing talk of we're getting the 1 in 100 years every other year sort of thing. So it is a concern for me, the flood risk.
concern for us as well, Councillor. Yeah. So I only put the points on my slide, but we've gone into a lot of detail in the report itself. The site satisfies the 1 in 100 and the 1 in 200 year flood risks with the added climate change factors, which is how we consider all flood risk now. So we add in the anticipated rise in sea levels, etc., linked to climate change, and the site with that ground raising and minimum finished floor level of 7.7 is flood-free in the 1 in 100 and 1 in 200 year flood risk scenarios. It is not flood-free in the 1 in 1,000, which we regard as the extreme flood event, and the units will flood in an extreme tidal 1 in 1,000 year event. And this is where that talk of the 100-year lifetime of development comes in, because there's certain things going on. You might be aware that there's some flood defence improvement works over Stevenson Street Way being undertaken by NRW, because this site, as you rightly infer, is at risk from a number of directions and a number of sources, so tidal and fluvial. So it's coming from south, but it's also potentially vulnerable to breaches north of the site, and not just this site, obviously, wide swathes of that area. So with the land raising and finished floor levels, we know with added climate change factors, it actually satisfies the TAN tests for 1 in 100 and 1 in 200 year. If the units were going to flood in a 1 in 100, 1 in 200 year event, we may be presenting this differently to you. But the 1 in 1,000 year extreme risk, it does exceed the tolerable limits, so the TAN allows for a 600 mil inundation in a severe flood event, such as the 1 in 1,000. This is actually above that. So we've had to consider those other material factors. So the site has the benefit of planning permission for 18 flats. 6 of those are at ground floor. They'd have no flood refuge. So with a house, a tidal event, you are likely to get advance warning. We've talked about this in the past. It would give the occupiers the opportunity to move possessions to upper floors, which the extant flatted accommodation wouldn't have the benefit of. So those other material factors have all added to our consideration, which is why that section in your report is quite complex and detailed. It's for those reasons.
Sorry, can I just come in there then? Because point 7.17 says the cost of future maintenance for all new approved flood mitigation measures, including defence, must be accepted by the developer. Is that being accepted?
No, the flood defences are off-site, Chair, so they would be maintained by NRW.
Right. And okay. Okay, thanks. Anybody else have any questions? Councillor Watkins?
Thank you, Chair. A number of questions, really. What is the difference in the affordable housing compared with this development overall? The development overall. That's the one question. In regards to the green spaces, how long or can we put a condition on that the developer is responsible for the maintenance of those green spaces? The other thing is the parking spaces. Are there going to be electric charging points there? And waste collection, is there a difficulty in regards to collecting waste from the residents? And the other one is a big concern of mine, is the fact that you say there's no contribution to education, yet recently we've had to remove one school in that area. So who's going to contribute towards that? Anybody, or can we get the developer to contribute a little towards it, should we say? Thank you, Joanne.
Okay, did you get all them, Joe? There's a few there.
Right, I'll do my best. Tell me if I've missed anything. Okay, affordable housing. Phase 1, or what I call Phase 1A. So all the units that were built in that 2009 to 2012 period by the registered social landlord link, all of them, 100%, were affordable. The proportion, I haven't even thought about the proportion because it's just not relevant to this phase because we've already got more than the percentage on the entire site. Alan Lowe, if he's present, may be able to help me if it's a 40% zone. Alan, do you know?
Yeah, no, we're in a 20% zone, so we've got a massive amount of additionality just in the first phase. So yeah, we're not really within our. It's not really within our gift to ask for any more affordable than it's already been provided.
Thanks, Alan.
Okay.
I can pick up on the school one at the end as well if you want, Joe.
Okay, all right, thanks. Green Space is a private management company. So I showed you a plan in the presentation of the areas that will be subject to private management. So none of it's coming across to the council on this phase. It'll all be subject to private management company, and that's going to be controlled through the legal agreement.
Yeah, what concerns me, Chair, that these private management companies go for 5 years and then they disappear, and then it's left to the council to pick up, or it's left derelict, basically. So I'm concerned that I would like the developer to be, how can I say, plan B to pick up the tab if the private management company fails.
Okay. Okay. Is that could that go in as a condition if needed?
I don't know if Joanne Evans wants to come in on that in terms of the wording of the legal agreement.
What we've proposed in the legal agreement is that the developer is responsible for the maintenance of the open space, whether they use a maintenance company or not. But they may, with the maintenance company, they might transfer the land to the maintenance company, and there isn't really anything we could do if that failed at that point. But obviously we'll try our best to make sure somebody's bound.
So if the land is not transferred to the private maintenance company, then it still remains the developer's responsibility to deal with it.
Yes, it would be, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, on the parking point, that's a valid point. We can add a condition regarding EV charge points on that. That's fine. So that's noted. We'll add a condition requiring that. Waste collection, that was the tracking, etc., for refuse was all part of the long drawn-out negotiations we've had with the developers. So the layout now is to the satisfaction of the highways officer. So that's all been ticked off. The school issue that you mentioned, I think you're referring to St Andrews. My understanding is that the children on this site will not go to St Andrews because that school is currently operating at capacity. So they're more likely to go to Liswerry Primary. Alan may want to come in and confirm that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, the catchment area for the development is very primary. It's showing actually quite a significant amount of space there at the moment. and projected space going forward over the next 5 years. So unfortunately at this time we can't ask anything for primary, just for secondary.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Thank you, officers.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councillor Owls?
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me. The management of the public realm by the estate management company, presumed residents will be subject to a service charge for that. Do we have any indication what that would be, and are we in a position in the legal agreement to cap that at a particular level?
That would be a private matter, really, for people if they were buying a property to look into.
Okay. And finally, the contribution for the park suggests Somerton Park. There is a closer park, which is Hampden Park, which is behind the houses in Hampden and Oliver Road. There's a park right there, which is closer. And my view is that Black Ash Park actually needs some investment, despite there not being a physical children's play area. There's a want for investment in that, and it's much closer. And for me, the sort of the sensible thing would be to look at Black Ash Park and what we can put there, which, because in reality, the people from this development are going to go nowhere near Somerton Park. They're going to use Black Ash Park, if any. And there are football clubs there that need our support, and there are sort of, it's a want for equipment. So I don't know if that can be sort of reconsidered, or whether that's a matter here, or whether discussions can take place after for officers. But my view is that that sort of contribution should go in to Black Ash Park, and in any event, Hampden and Oliver Park is closer than Somerton Park.
Chair, do you mind me asking, can you repeat the name of the local equipped area of play?
Yeah, Hampden and Oliver Park. It's
No.
behind... Oh, sorry.
Okay. I was just going to say it's an absolutely legitimate point you raise. My understanding is that Black Ash Park did, back in the day, have a local equipped area of play, but it was subject to vandalism, etc., and was subsequently removed. I'm not sure there's an appetite by our leisure team to put one back for those reasons, but you know, we can have another discussion about that. I've not heard of the one you've just mentioned, so I think we need to take a look at that. Could I suggest, Chair, that this is something, because we're securing the contribution and the applicants have agreed that, in terms of how it's spent, I think we could have another discussion with the applicants and potentially our leisure team further to the councillor's comments, and do that under our delegated powers following the meeting, and I can update subsequently.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I'm grateful for that, Joanne and Chair. In terms of sort of the leisure team's appetite, I mean, certainly ward councillors and people in the ward are really keen for Black Ash Park to have some investment, as are the sort of discussions we've had with the police, because it is an area of sort of significant antisocial behaviour and vandalism. I accept the sort of not the want to put some play equipment back in there, but actually that's probably sort of contrary to the discussions I've been trying to push the cabinet member to look at as well. So I think it would be good to sort of look at it in the round and look at the delegated powers on that. Would be great.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to help where I can as well.
Okay, then that's agreed. Councillor Watkins?
Can I ask if it's possible for the ward councillors to be involved in that discussion as well?
I think what I'll do as a first step is have a discussion with Alan. We'll get in touch with our leisure colleagues because they need to action whatever is decided. And I think following that, we'll make contact with the local councillors, if that's okay, and then we'll take it from there. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody will be updated in future and whatever. Okay, so are there any other questions? No? So the recommendations are granted with conditions and subject to section 106. Do we have somebody to propose that, please? Councillor Ewell, second. Councillor Jordan, all in favour? Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Now go on to item number 2. Which is at page 43 to 68, application number 220551, and this will be presented by Stephen Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, the site is defined by the site edge red on this plan. It's located within the Celtic Springs Business Park off Lakeside Drive. The application is seeking to construct a car showroom with a service centre, a satellite car showroom and a satellite service centre. And the application has been reported to committee because it's a major planning application. So the site is currently vacant land. It's sort of this part of the site here. So it's situated within the Celtic Springs Business Park, which is this sort of area here. And then you've got Klepper Park to the north. These are the former LG buildings, which have now been occupied by various high-tech uses and data centres. This is the Holiday Inn here, and then there's a little retail parade here, just to get your bearings. So in terms of constraints on the site, there are trees right at the north. They're off the site, but they're right at the northern boundary there, which are protected trees. As I said, the site is clearly vacant. It's designated as a site of importance for nature conservation, or SINC for short. So it's got ecological value. The site is allocated in the local development plan for B1 business uses. So just to give you some idea of what the site currently looks like, so it's currently vegetated and vacant. This is sort of looking in a westerly direction. You can sort of see Airbus offices here and the prison HQ in the distance. Well, it's looking in the other direction, so these are the existing office buildings at the north of the site. And then you can see the little retail parade here, an LG in the distance. And then this is taken from Lakeside Drive. So this is the proposed layout. What you've got is a proposal for a new car showroom here, which would be occupied by Porsche. And then the dark hatching is the service centre that would go along with the showroom. This would be a satellite showroom. So the applicant is a company called Dick Lovett, which sort of deal with sort of high-end cars. So we don't know which brand would go in here, but it would be one of the top brands. And then this would be the service centre then associated with this satellite showroom. There'd be 2 points of access to the site. So at the moment there's an existing access that comes off the roundabout that serves these offices to the north. So off this spur would be created a new access that would sort of lead to all the new parking areas. But opposite the retail parade, they propose to create an additional access point, and then this would serve the satellite showroom and service area. They are proposing to provide cycle stands. This would be a bank of electric charging points. Proposing a new zebra crossing, this point here. New drainage attenuation pond to allow for runoff to collect in this area here. Various staff and car parking as well. And then on the western boundary is proposed an ecological and landscaped area. So it's not there for landscaping purposes, really. It is there to provide ecological mitigation. And that would include the planting of 117 new trees. So these are the elevations of the main showroom. That will be occupied by Porsche. As you can see, the second one down would be the elevation that you could see from Lakeside Drive as you as you're driving through Lakeside Drive there. And then this would be the north elevation. As you can see, the showroom, and then the service area here, so the service building. Then this is the south, and then the west elevation. So it's a two-storey building, and it will be finished with a mix of cladding and glazing, so quite modern in appearance. The showroom centre would have light-coloured cladding, and then the service centre has got a dark-coloured cladding. This is just a floor plan of the ground floor layout of the showroom and the service centre, just to give you an idea of how that would be laid out. Typical arrangement for a car showroom. These are the plans for the satellite showroom. So obviously a smaller building, single storey, again a mix of cladding and glazing, and this would provide a car display area and an office. And then the elevations for the satellite service centre. So part single storey, part two-storey, again a mix of cladding and glazing. So in terms of the principle of development, the site is this area here. As you can see, it's allocated currently for business use under policy EM13. Now, car dealerships have got what we call a sui generis use. So what that means is that it's a Latin phrase, and what it means is that it doesn't neatly fall within any particular use class. So it's not a B1 use. So the use that's proposed, the car dealership use, is not in accordance with EM1, which is seeking a B1 use on the site. So we have to look at policy EM3, which considers how to consider proposals that don't fall within a B1 use. And those are the sorts of issues you look at. You look to see whether it's been marketed for a period of time and whether they've had any success. And you also look at the range and choice of employment land that Newport has got. In other words, is it the end of the world if we lose this allocation? So in terms of assessing this, there's a number of points. The first is that we know that the site has been marketed over many years. The site has remained vacant since it was first allocated for B1 use back in 2006 with the Unitary Development Plan, but clearly has never been developed. Now, Newport does have a plentiful supply of employment land. It's got just under 13 years' worth of supply. So in terms of the quantity of employment land, we've got more than enough. One particular issue on this site, though, is the fact that it is probably our best business park. It's a high-end business park, well landscaped. So it's a park that's sort of there to attract high-end occupiers. So we haven't got a great deal of that type of land. So that is something that we obviously have to consider. Considering that, the dealership would be a modern, high-quality development, and it would, in our opinion, enhance the image of the business park, having regard to the fact that that land has been vacant for so long. And it would create about 100 new jobs for Newport. So whilst it's not a technically a B1 use, it would have a positive impact in employment terms. The other thing to consider is the pandemic. It's altered working patterns. There's far more working from home now than there used to be. And that has clearly had a massive impact in terms of reducing demand for B1 office space. So if you imagine they found it difficult to find an office occupied for the site all these years, and now it's even tougher. The developer has provided us with some information as well in terms of the amount of vacant office space that exists in Celtic Springs and in Klepper Park to the north and in Imperial Way. So they're clearly demonstrating that there is far too much office space available. So having regard to all those factors, considering policy EM3, we consider the proposal accords with EM3, and we are consider the proposal acceptable in principle. The other issue is obviously the ecological value of the site. So as I mentioned earlier, the site is allocated as a site of importance for nature conservation, or SINC, and that's like a local ecological designation, and it's allocated because of its what's termed a mosaic habitat. So we have to consider the proposal in light of policy CE8, and what that says is that proposals will only be permitted where there would be no overall loss of nature conservation resource, and there would be no significant adverse effect on the geological interests of the site, and then appropriate mitigation or compensation measures can be achieved. Now, the proposal would mean the loss of 2.3 hectares of SINC, but the layout shows the provision of 1.2 hectares of land, recreating the habitat on the western portion of the site. So that's that ecological area I was showing you earlier. That's the compensation measure that the developer is putting forward. Now, what that does mean is that overall there will be a loss of 1.1 hectares of ecological land. However, the current habitat is of very low quality. It's not reached its potential in ecological terms. So the proposal would mean that the replacement habitat could be better managed and be of a higher quality. And so we put a condition on, condition 3, which would ensure that the developer would provide this mitigation area and ensure its management over the coming years to encourage wildlife and improvements to that habitat. And on this basis, the ecology officers raised no objection to the application. So in summary, it's about less quantity but better quality. And so on this basis, we are supporting the application. In terms of landscaping, as I say, I've mentioned the ecological area. There is also landscaping around the site, adjacent to Lakeside Drive. So obviously, we're after a good quality landscaped site to fit in with a business park, and we think it does that. One sort of point of concern that the landscape officer has raised is this area here, this bank of parking. The landscape officer feels that leaves quite a small area for landscaping at this point. On balance, we think that in the round the scheme is acceptable. This is only a small area that we're talking about. There's a car park directly opposite, which associated with the hotel, so it's not particularly out of keeping. I think on balance, the scheme is reasonably well landscaped, so we're supportive of it as officers. In terms of trees, as I mentioned, there's some protected trees, protected group at the northern end. Initially, the tree officer was concerned because the parking area was larger. It was coming over in this direction here, and the tree officer was concerned that this could potentially impact upon these trees. So the developer has reduced the number of parking and ensure that it's outside the root protection area, which is, you can see the purple edge, purple dotted line there. So we've got more ecological area, and we've got trees now that are protected, and the tree officer has removed her objection. She now supports the scheme. Highways are satisfied in terms of traffic generation and impact on the highway network. They're happy with the access arrangements and visibility and the level of parking. Design is considered to be of a good standard. In terms of residential amenity, there are no immediate residential occupiers. Probably the closest are some residential properties on the other side of the A48, so quite some distance away and separated by a very busy road, so we're not concerned about impact on amenity. Air quality, the site's not within an air quality area. We've got electric charging points to encourage take-up of electric cars, and obviously a lot of green infrastructure, so air quality, we're satisfied. So on that basis, we're recommending the plan permission is granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like a quick view, really. Obviously, Dick Levitt and Porsche themselves are high prestige car dealership. It's a bit like the Waitrose of the shopping world of Tesco's and such. I know they're relocating from Cardiff to come to Newport, so I think it's a gain for Newport if we do accept this. Looking at the building, it does look a bit high-tech, the materials they use, but I think it's a similar pattern they use across. It's a Porsche design across the UK, and I believe it's going to be one of the latest designs and highest tech. And the jobs that's going to be created there will be high-tech because Porsche are pushing forward with electricity on the cars, so it will be electric cars mostly going forward. And to gain this dealership into Newport, I know it's prime location for office use and such like that. We've got concerns, but I think to have a prestige occupant such as Porsche, Dick Levitt on that site will only add value to that area. That's my true belief on it. Thank you.
Councillor Watkins?
Thank you, Chair. As one of the councillors for the Marshfield and Tredegar Park ward, I've had no adverse comments at all from this development. Number of concerns, or not concerns, questions. Is there a footpath along that road which it borders? That's the one question. And are the developer going to be responsible for the maintenance of the green spaces? The other one is the attenuation pond. Where does that run to from there? Okay, I understand it accepts the runoff from the parking areas and the development, but where does it go to from that attenuation pond? And the other thing is that I couldn't quite get the B1 and the E1, BM1. So this development is not an EM1/3. That's why it's coming back. It's basically a change of use then, I assume.
If I just, I can understand the policy bit was probably a bit confusing. I'll try and go through that again. So EM1 is the policy in the local development plan. That's the name of the policy. And what that policy says is that the site should be built for B1 use. And B1 use is business, offices. You know. So car showrooms don't fall within B1. They fall within sort of outside the use classes. They're of a use of their own. So technically not a B1 use. But they obviously do bring employment. So in that sense, we don't think it conflicts with B1 in too great a manner, particularly given the factors that I outlined, you know, in terms of the fact that the estate, that site has been vacant for so long, and obviously they're having problems in getting office occupiers on the site because of the demand for it. So does that help you out in terms of?
Has there been any objections from other businesses on the park at all?
No, there haven't been. So in terms of the footpath, there is no footpath on this.
Sorry a minute, Steve. Grant, can we listen, please?
Yeah. So you can see this is the site here. There's a footpath this side, but not that side. They're not proposing to provide a footpath here, but what they are proposing to do is just provide the footpath down to where there would be a zebra crossing. All right? Because you can imagine people who are on the site might want to pop across to this retail parade. There's a Greggs in there. People go there for lunch. So people would probably want to pop across. So that's how they're sort of catering for pedestrian traffic. In terms of the attenuation pond, so the site is going to have to be, they're going to have to get SUDS consent, all right, which is managed by our city services team. And what SUDS does is ensures that the quantity of water that runs off a site is managed. It doesn't just pour off a site sort of unregulated. It's slowed down with these sort of attenuation ponds. Where it goes from there, I don't know. But I assume then it would make its way into the existing drainage network that currently serves the park. Because from memory, I think there is a drainage pond further south that's there already. Yeah, can you see on this plan here? There's already drainage, sort of. So I would assume it will make its way down there, but that's an assumption. I don't know the detail. All right.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, because of electricity on the cars now, electric cars, EVs, there'll be electrical points put on this plot. Would there any be available to the public to be used? Is there any discussions on that?
Yeah, I'm assuming those electric charging points are for visitors. That would be the reason for them.
Yeah, the dealership, currently most dealerships have them for their own, like Tesla, you pull in with a Tesla car, you can use them free and whatever, but if you look across the land now, there's some dealerships now making certain points accessible to the public 24/7, because it's the setup, it's part of like a national grid. I just wonder if we discussed anything with the proposals, if we can have access to so the public can have access, sorry.
I'm not aware that the case officers had that sort of level of detailed discussions about that, no. Sorry, I don't know. Sorry.
Councillor Jordan?
Yeah, it was just out of my ignorance, I was asked about that. Councillor there. What are they classed as a satellite showroom?
So the main showroom is obviously Porsche. That's the principal sort of, they're seeing that as the HQ. It's the new HQ for Porsche in this sort of region. And then they'd have, a smaller showroom for another brand, whether that be Jaguar or something like that. It's another brand within the Dick Lovett sort of remit. So I suppose they're seeing Porsche as the primary occupier.
Could I add to that, please, Chair?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so in Bristol, if you go over to Bristol now, they've got a Porsche garage, a BMW garage, and an Aston Martin garage. And I know with Aston Martin building the DBX in Cardiff, they are looking possibly for an Aston Martin sort of like an outlet, so it might be an Aston Martin type of thing. But in Swindon, they got Ferrari, so it is all high-end, maybe a low-volume sale, so you could just bolt on something, but it would be prestige.
Okay. Any other questions? No? So the recommendations is that it's granted with conditions. Could I have somebody to... Councillor Jordan, second. Councillor Jones. So all in favour, please? Okay. Unanimous. Thank you. Just want to confirm that item 3 has been removed from the agenda, and pages 75 onwards is the appeal decisions and its information only. And I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'll see you at the next meeting. Okay, thank you.